Hello, and welcome back to this week's to another episode of Critical Reactions. Brain fart. With your host, Bryan. We're going to start a new week, which means it's a new theme, and this week's theme is songs to cry to. We're looking at emotionally investing tracks, I suppose, is what this theme's about. Today we're going to be looking at a track from Alcest called Autre Temps, which translates to something. Another time. I knew I had read it somewhere. I did check the lyrics first. I figure that for a week that's going to be about emotionally involving songs, it's either going to be because of the musical emotions or the lyrical ones. So I figured I'd get a gist of it so that I can kind of tap into that emotion going into the track. So let's dive into this, see what Alcest is bringing to the table today. Alright, we have this guitar line, vocals, very sparse strumming. Those drum fills. Beautiful bass tone. Nice variation on the first time running through this, where we have our moving idea here. Yeah, we have our guitar from our first section with our guitar from our second section. Very clean snare rolls. It's interesting the duality through here. Beautiful melancholic sections to these driving, powerful ones. Okay. Um. Yeah. So, a minimalistic track, not so much in the idea of minimalism as art in music, which is a totally different topic altogether. The minimalistic movement in music is a different topic altogether, but definitely a song that makes use of the least amount of ideas necessary, even possible. We have a single guitar chordal idea that we hear from beginning to end. It is this underlying element that holds everything together. Um, we have one vocal line that is used frequently for both of the verses, maybe, and then we have a vocalization that goes on in our more driving section. That I don't know if there's words tied to that. I got sounds. I don't know if there are words. But that's not to say that the song is entirely linear, sorry, entirely cyclical, because we have these two recurring elements. Um, and I think that's one of the things I like about this track is that it walks that line between moving concepts, overarching concepts from beginning to end, and having that similar through line that connects everything. So through that, we get that connective tissue that brings everything together. It says, this is all part of the same idea. This is just one song, that kind of concept. But it's also told with moving ideas. Each section is diverse from what comes before it. So, like I said, it walks that line. It's a fantastic middle ground between repetition and new ideas. Now, some of these new ideas, though, do drastically change the track. We have two major sections in the song that we dance between, what I called the beautiful melancholy and the driving momentum, or the powerful driving moment, I think is what I called it. And I think it's interesting that we walk between these two, because typically we don't bring those together. Melancholy is so rarely associated with drive and motivation. We typically also relate it to a moment of weakness, is a term that I've heard tossed around to somebody who's going to fall on their knees due to, emotional burden. Motivation, movement, power, direction, these are not typically terms we associate with somebody going through grief. I really enjoy how they tie them back to back. I'm going to touch on that later because right now I want to talk about how they go about crafting these sections. Our first one, our melancholic section, is primarily created through our minimalistic ideas. I've already spoken about them. We have our chord progression or our chordal idea that's going on in our right pan guitar. We have our vocals in our, like I said, the section I think has lyrics. I don't know if the driving section has lyrics or if it's just vocalizations. And our minimalistic drumming, just a bass kick and a snare every once in a while. It's very sparse. This is our first verse. That's it, just those three instruments. You don't get more simple or vulnerable or isolating than. I mean, you can. You can go down to one or two instruments, of course, but our drums are barely there. Our guitar is really sitting on one chord and occasionally playing some different notes within it, which is technically changing the triad that it's performing, but I wouldn't really call it a chordal movement there. And then we have our vocals that sit on one note and just kind of dance around it. There aren't a lot of jumps or anything going on with the vocal melody either. Everything is rather stagnant. It is isolating. It is minimalist. It is simple. There's also a dreariness and a lethargy that's going on here as well. The chords are not anything I would describe as bright or happy or joyful. There is a tinge of brightness in them. They are not completely downtrodden, but they are pensive at best and or pensive at the most positive and melancholic at the most negative. Um, there is still a lot of sorrow within them, even though it is more of a nuanced chordal idea. Um, and our vocals are very calm, collected, and comfortable. There is not a lot of energy in them. It seems like a very comfortable range for our vocalist to be in. There isn't a lot of um, power or volume behind them. There's definitely air pressure. It's not like it's a whisper or the voice isn't on the brink of cracking and actually losing that core tone that the vocal cords would create, coming down into a crackle, the fry sound. There's definitely, like I said, enough air pressure to sustain the tone, but it's not anything that's really powerful, projecting. It's just very close, comfortable singing style, and all of this, like I said, just kind of gives me this sorrowful element. It is a sad moment, but like I said, there's tinges of brightness. I might go for pensive here, maybe slightly melancholic, but it is not wholly positive. It is a mixed exploration here. The second time we enter this idea, we preface it going into it with a left pan guitar melody. And when we get into the second verse proper, that melody is overplayed on top of our drumming and our right panned chordal guitar. And we have a bass present as well. We have filled out the instrumentation, the orchestration is larger. However, a lot of what I've just stated is still true. It is less driving, it is less full, and it is still more melancholic than our second section of the track. And this is where the contrast begins. Our second section has more vocals. I'm not entirely sure if they are second vocalists or if they are just extra backup vocal lines recorded by our lead vocalist, but we have more vocal elements. Sometimes they are harmonizing with our core vocals, and sometimes we get a little bit of a call and response idea. Additionally, though, our drums are driving. There are plenty of drum fills throughout this section, and they continue to expand as the song goes on. We have even more drum fills in the second time we visit this section than we did the first. There is a lot of forward momentum to these moments. Also, due to the larger instrumentation and orchestration, we have other brighter ideas. Our vocals are no longer sitting within a single note and just sort of dancing around it in a melancholic, effortless way. We have these higher pitched oohs and ahs, I think. Like I said, I'm not too sure if there's lyrics here or not, that are sitting above in range and have inflective movement to them, where they are more than just what seems to be somebody singing very calmly. There's more energy to them, there's more direction, there's movement. They definitely do not show that same lethargy that we have in our verse. Our guitar introduces some brighter melodies to counter against what our vocals are doing. And our bass fills out the low end and gives us a nice round sound sphere rather than what we had earlier, which was a bit flatter since it was missing that low end representation. These sections wholly push the song forward. That is their entire goal. They are brighter. I don't know if I want to say bouncier. They are more driving though. We have more hits being played, more notes being played per bar, whether that's from our melodic instruments, from the micro movements we get in the vocals, or from just vastly more notes coming out of our drummer because we have all these fills in between our rhythmic hits. It is just a section that feels like it's ready to go to the next moment. Sometimes, as we saw in the middle of the track, that means returning back to where we were, back to that slightly melancholic section, but sometimes that means progressing towards the outro, which again kind of carries more of this energy with it. It is a bit of a brighter outro. Um, And then I want to talk about the drumming in particular, real quick. I probably should say something about the production, but I'll be honest, I really wasn't paying attention to it, for better or worse. Usually, when I don't pay attention to the production, it's it's adequate. It works. Usually, the only time the production stands out to me when I got to make comments about it is when it's difficult for me to listen to or exceptional. Those don't always happen. So sometimes we get something like this where it just works. It's fine for what it's doing. I don't see there's nothing offensive about it, but also subsequently also nothing that draws attention to it. So yeah, the drumming though. I gotta talk about the drums though. For the most part, half of this track, the drums stay out of the way. An occasional hit every other bar or something. But during those up tempo, I can't even call them up tempo. The driving sections. I want to find a new word. I say driving a lot. The driving sections. The drummer is laying down these beautiful rolls. There was one in particular that I really liked. It was like 2/8 notes followed by a 16th roll on the snare, and then two more hits, and then another 16th roll on the snare. And it was just really cool because it had this uh, rumbling momentum, like a snowball effect going on, where it honestly felt like we were going to have the two notes and then this little roll and then an outro to this fill. Maybe just a couple more hits to slow it back down and bring it back into tempo with what we were already doing. And instead, we had this speeding up and slowing down, and speeding up and slowing down kind of vibe, like going downhill and then coming back uphill. And it was just this very neat moment. But what really stood out to me, other than just the momentum aspect of it, is just how crisp, clean, and precise these snare rolls are. They are seemingly perfect. I don't have robot ears. I can't tell you specifically, oh, they were 1/128th of a second, late or something like that. But there's a really strong precision here where they feel like they are all equal spaced apart, perfectly coming at that section, the subdivision of the bar. It is just really great. It's a very clean style of drumming. Very simple lines, but effective rolls and ornamentation when necessary. And it stood out to me probably because it was the most complex element. So even though it isn't hyper complex, it is going to stand out against most of the other simple lines. But yeah, I enjoyed that. I really did. I know we've done Alcest before. Might have been on a live stream. I don't know. But I got to look more into this band. Primarily because of that drummer, but also because I want to see what else they do inside this emotive atmosphere. Speaking of emotions, what is going on here? I mentioned I wanted to talk about this later, and I do before we get into the lyrics. I just released a song similar to this about a month ago called Getting Better. And it's about dealing with loss. So I'm very familiar with the story that they're telling here, or at least my perception of it. As we all know, art is subjective, and what you bring to the table will influence what you get out of it. So I know that the song is about loss already. But it's interesting too that they chose what feels to me like an exploration of grief, which is exactly what my song was about. In that we have the melancholic sections, which are the moments when you think about the person, maybe good memories of them, and it makes you sad. You know, these are moments that you wish you could make more of, and you can't because, that person is gone. They're no longer alive. You don't have the opportunity to make more memories like this, but there is something positive that comes out of it because you have the joy of remembering these moments. And that, I think, is that little tinge of brightness. It isn't a spirally type of sorrow that we get in the quieter sparser sections. It is, like I mentioned, melancholic, but maybe just pensive. There is a little brightness. That's the joy that you get, but it's not a happy part of the track. Whereas our more driving moment is going to be uh, falling back into that stage of grief we call acceptance, um, and wanting to push forward with life, moving on because you know that that's what they would want you to do. But unlike how it sounds like on paper, there's 5 stages of grief, and when you get to the 5th stage, you've accepted it and you just move on. And that's not how it works. At least that's not how I've experienced it to happen. It's a fluctuating idea, moving between the sadness of it and the acceptance of it happens all the time. There are days when it is more difficult for me to get back to that acceptance mode and move on with life. You just kind of sit in that sorrow for a little longer than other times. Hitting the acceptance is not the end, it's sort of just the beginning of the rest of your life. And I like how the song bounces back and forth between the two ideas. There are moments of pensive recollection that are sad and happy, they are bittersweet, and then there's moments of driving momentum and moving on, getting to whatever comes next. And I think it's beautiful to put that into the track. So, this is a very short lyrical song. It is written in French. We have a translation though. A faraway prayer carried by the evening wind animates the leaves in their languorous dance. It's the hymn of the old trees sung for you, for those somber forests which are now asleep. So many seasons have passed without waiting for us, the golden leaves falling to the ground to die. Will someday come back to life beneath a radiant sky, but our eroded world will remain the same, and tomorrow, you and I will be gone. So yeah, definitely a story about um, longing and passing and dealing with the passage of time. And it is beautiful how all of that fits together musically, sonically, and lyrically. It all comes together very well to tell this story. All right, those are my thoughts on Alcest's Autre Temps. I think I'm pronouncing. I probably should have looked that up first. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this one. If you enjoyed it or not. Anything that stood out to you. Anything you'd like to add on to my analysis or correct me on. Let me know. Above that, if you could head out of the comment section into the description box. There's a link for Linktree, which will take you to this menu right here. It has links for everything related to the channel. You can support the channel through Patreon, pick up some merch, submit special selections, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. We have a special selection coming up next in 5 minutes if you're watching this live. Otherwise, you can just search for it. We're going to be looking at Panzerkunst. I don't know what that is. It sounds familiar. I feel like I should know. Maybe we've done them before. Maybe they've been requested before. A lot. I don't know. The name's familiar. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Till next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.